Amidst the tranquil green hills on a hazy moonlit night, a young newlywed couple on their honeymoon unwittingly stumbled into a living hell. After a night where 8 human-faced beasts brutally massacred them and stole everything, the wife survived in agony, while the husband died in humiliation and resentment. 20 years later, the blood feud resurfaced. Mutilated bodies, victims torn in half, explosions. The cries of women and naked figures lurking on the forbidden road signaled one truth. The curse of vengeance had awakened, the living trembled, the dead returned, and the green hills began to drink blood once more. 7:00 p.m. The seasonal breeze on the green hills was incredibly cool and pleasant. The moon cast a faint glow, intermittently piercing through dreary clouds. 2 young newlywed couples were enjoying their sweet honeymoon, camping on the hill, seemingly blissful. Ngoc whispered to her husband, Tai, "Honey, I wish time could stop like this forever, don't you? I'm so scared. Will we ever drift apart?" Tai gently placed a hand over her lips, smiling. "If I were gone, who would guide you through the windy evening?" Ngoc's eyes welled up with tears as she hugged him tightly. "Don't say such things, it makes me sad." Tai wrapped his arms around her, softly saying, "Then don't think like that anymore. We'll be together forever." Tai lit a fire to warm Ngoc, then pulled out a beautiful hairpin adorned with sparkling beads from his pocket. Ngoc's eyes lit up at the sight of the pretty hairpin, a bright smile spreading across her face. Tai gently clipped it onto her wavy hair. "I'm poor, so I have nothing precious, only this hairpin that I made for you." Ngoc looked at him, deeply moved. "I don't need anything, just having you makes me so happy. I love you and you love me." They sat by the fire, exchanging a sweet, warm kiss. The wind grew colder as night fell, and crickets chirped mournfully in the long night. As they lost themselves in each other, Tai was suddenly grabbed by the head and pulled away from Ngoc, accompanied by a chilling, savage voice. My, a loving couple, aren't we? Haha." Ngoc gasped, realizing that 8 strangers had surrounded them. Perhaps the couple didn't know, but this was a notorious gang of perverts who enjoyed wreaking havoc everywhere, using their power to bully innocent people. "Who are you?" Tai struggled, but it was useless. They were much larger than him. "What do you want? Let me go." A larger man among them, presumably their leader, stepped forward and said, "You came onto my land without asking permission, did you?" Tai looked confused. "What? I didn't know about this." "Didn't know? You didn't know?" As they spoke, they took turns kicking Tai in the stomach, making Ngoc anxious. Please forgive us, we just got married." Tai also knelt down, begging for forgiveness, but it was no use. He was kicked again, falling to the ground. Ngoc screamed in terror, "Help me." "Help, huh?" They came forward and slapped Ngoc across the face, sending her to the ground. The leader stared at the couple for a moment, then his twisted, animalistic desires flared up. He ordered the others to strip the couple of their clothes. The poor young couple cried out in pain, helpless, unable to do anything. The place was as deserted as a graveyard, no one would know. Ngoc sobbed, "What are you doing?" "Heh, a newlywed couple, so I'm just helping you out. Go ahead and consummate your marriage. Ha ha." They brutally pushed the two together, shouting, "Consummate your marriage," making them feel immense pain and humiliation. The couple seized the opportunity to run, but it was futile, there were too many of them. The leader, seeing this, became enraged and ordered them to tie Tai's hands and feet to the ground. Tai was terrified and panicked. "What are you doing? What are you going to do?" "You didn't want the polite offer, so you'll get the punishment instead. Fine by me." He pulled out a sharp knife, ran it across Tai's pale, terrified face, then savagely sliced off his manhood and tossed it into the nearby fire. "Ah!" Ngoc screamed hysterically. "No!" Both husband and wife were pinned down, unable to do anything for each other. She could only cry and struggle. Blood splattered all over his face, but he wasn't afraid. He laughed even louder at Tai's pain and humiliation. They even cruelly took out an iron rod with an X-shaped frame. They heated the iron rod in the fire until it glowed red. Without a hint of fear, they pressed the scorching iron, branding a clear X onto Tai's chest, making him writhe in even more agony. According to their custom, when they killed someone, they branded the victim with an X as a mark of their cruel and twisted acts. Tai was in extreme pain, his eyes glazed over, on the verge of fainting. They did not spare him. They stabbed a knife directly into his heart, causing him to bleed out and die from infection on the spot. Ngoc cried out in anguish, "Tai, no." After killing her husband, they saw the beautiful Ngoc and intended to rape her, but not before taking the X-shaped iron rod and branding her chest, the searing pain piercing through her to the sky. "Ha ha, thank us, you're about to die together. Ha ha." They shoved her backward onto the ground. One began to unbuckle his pants, moving closer to Ngoc. Fortunately, Ngoc grabbed 2 rocks and slammed them onto the heads of 2 men on either side. As for the leader, she sprang up, hitting his head with a powerful blow, making him stumble. She kicked him, sending him falling. The remaining men saw this and rushed to grab her, but she was quicker, scooping up handfuls of dirt and sand and throwing it into their eyes before sprinting down the hillside. "Get that bitch for me, this time I'll skin you." Ngoc ran as fast as she could, screaming for help, but there was no one around. She ran endlessly, not daring to look back, then tripped over a rock and tumbled down the slope, falling unconscious, her shrill screams tearing through the night. Behind her, the gang had left the area, returning the somber night to its original state. Their car drove away from the hill, leaving Tai's poor body lying by the dying embers of the fire. The sky began to drizzle, waking up the small crickets, whose mournful chirps filled the air. Ngoc lay unconscious by a chinaberry tree. Chinaberry leaves hesitantly fell, covering her. Her limbs were freezing cold, and the rain began to pour down. Faintly, she heard someone calling her. "Ngoc, where are you? I've been waiting for so long. It's so cold here, my love." In her daze, she replied, "I'm here, I'll heal you, you'll be fine." In her delirium, she saw her husband naked, lying in an ink-black void, his entire body covered in fresh blood, calling her name in pain. Her consciousness rushed to embrace his body, but it dissolved, and she woke up. A single cold drop. She jolted awake, 1 drop, then 2, then a prolonged downpour. Panicked, she sat up and ran back to her husband's spot. When she arrived, she fell, clutching his body and sobbing uncontrollably. Her once smooth, cloud-like hair was now tangled. She held up the hairpin he had given her. She picked it up, cherishing it, then cried out loud, "Tai, wait for me, I'm coming." She intended to use the sharp pin from the hairpin to end her life, but she stopped that thought. "No, why should I die? I must live. I will avenge my husband. I won't let them be arrogant within the law's grasp. I will have my revenge, I will spare no one. I swear to heaven and earth, I will kill every single one of you." As her vow ended, a massive clap of thunder boomed, and the rain intensified, as if affirming the widow's oath. After tying her hair back and taking advantage of the rain-softened earth, she wept bitterly, digging a grave for her husband with her own small hands. After burying him, she bid farewell to her unfortunate husband's grave, then quietly took heavy steps down the hill and disappeared. In a strange land, she was utterly alone, not knowing where to go. The last thing she kept was the hairpin. Thus ended a horrific night. The persistent rain seemed to mourn their tragic love, a love they thought would last forever, but which instead marked the beginning of a series of tragedies and hatred. Now, at the foot of the hill lay a lavish, magnificent city, its streets twinkling like stars at night. But the road down the hill led through a dense, overgrown forest path, a stark contrast to the city ahead. One day, a man named Ace, not a stranger, but one of the 8 men from that night, was driving recklessly. When he reached this stretch of road, his tire went flat. He had to push his car along the deserted path. As he walked, he saw a naked man standing with his back to him, as if relieving himself. He looked closely and realized the man was wearing no clothes, so he startled and asked, "Hey, you, who are you? What are you doing?" The man said nothing. Ace, annoyed, propped his car there and walked closer, shouting louder, "I'm asking you, why aren't you answering?" At this, the man turned around. There was absolutely nothing there, but blood gushed out like a faucet, spraying violently onto Ace's face, blurring his vision. The fresh red blood gushed harder, slimier, as he screamed hysterically. Ace screamed wildly, but no one heard him. He gaped, trying to call for help, but the blood gushed even stronger, filling his throat, choking him. He coughed violently, covered in fresh red blood. He forced his eyes open, vaguely seeing the dirt road covered in red blood. In a flash, 2 things flew directly into his eyes. Everything became a deep crimson. He could no longer see the sky, moon, or clouds. Terrified, he tried to grope his way out like a blind man when a sharp, slicing sound rent the air. Ace's body was split in half, falling in two directions. The forest that day had a feast. What the nearby trees absorbed was not water, but blood. The blood of a cold-blooded killer. The entire dirt road, a wide circumference, was drenched in fresh blood and flesh, and in the center lay the two halves of the vicious Ace. As the rooster crowed for the third watch, a sudden gust of wind swept through, and a dense flock of black crows descended to feast on his dead flesh. His car lay intact nearby, blood spattered all over its front. The next morning, a local resident going into the forest to chop wood discovered half a body, partly eaten by crows, along with the car and the bloody scene. He immediately reported it to the police. Despite extensive investigation, the police could not determine how Ace had been killed. It became a terrifying and perplexing unsolved case, an obsession known as the Bloody Road for the entire flourishing city. Time passed quickly. 20 years later, Flourishing City had changed. However, that bloody road had become a forbidden path, and the case remained unsolved, the first of its kind. 20 years later, the bustling market in Flourishing City was a vibrant scene, deeply ingrained as a characteristic feature of the locals. At dawn, the market opened, displaying various meats and vegetables. This place had also become a popular tourist destination. People came from many places, even domestic and international visitors who loved this market. A must-visit was Ngoc's fabric shop. This shop had a story of its own. Ngoc was a capable woman. She lost her parents early and diligently raised her beautiful daughter, Lian, the prettiest girl in town. Lian had fair skin, pink lips, and a graceful, aristocratic beauty mark befitting a rich family's daughter. Indeed, Ngoc was very wealthy. She opened the fabric shop to continue her mother's craft and out of her own passion. Ngoc had once lived in poverty with her husband, but one day he died from a serious illness. Ngoc remained a widow, diligently raising her daughter, and eventually surpassed everyone. It was said that the restaurant next to the fabric shop was also delicious and famous. Today, a group of 4 tourists, recent graduates, came to visit the city, wanting to enjoy a romantic autumn in this lavish, flourishing city. Lian's restaurant, a small and charming place, was located across the street, parallel to Ngoc's fabric shop. That day, Lian's restaurant was packed with customers. Ngoc had to close her shop to help her daughter with sales. The mother and daughter worked effortlessly, admired and loved by all. At noon, the weather was scorching hot. The entire city felt like it was on fire. A woman about Ngoc's age, dressed in tattered clothes, shuffled past the restaurant door. On her head was a hairpin adorned with pearls. Ngoc felt immense pity for her and led her into her daughter's restaurant, offering her a free plate of meat and rice. The woman happily ate, devouring it with gusto. Seeing this, Ngoc pulled up a chair and sat with her, asking, "Is the food good?" The woman nodded, seemingly very pleased. Ngoc continued, "You seem strange, almost as if you're not from around here. Where are you from?" She shook her head, as if she had some mental issue. Ngoc, feeling sympathetic, asked again, "Then what's your name?" She shook her head once more, but this time she didn't remain silent. She raised both hands, gesturing, and repeatedly said, "I don't know who I am or where I am." Ngoc realized she must have gone through a major shock to be like this. She took a comb and tried to comb the woman's tangled, beehive-like hair. Unexpectedly, the woman angrily swatted the comb away and cried out, "Don't take my clip." Her scream startled everyone in the restaurant. Lian quickly calmed the customers. Ngoc inquired again, wanting to offer comfort and assurance that she meant no harm. "That's a beautiful clip." At this, the woman's anger subsided. She held up the clip proudly. "It's the clip my husband made for me. Isn't it cute?" "It's very cute." "Hee hee, it's beautiful." They talked for a while, then the woman suddenly grew terrified and burst into tears. Don't kill us." "Hush, hush now, please calm down, tell me what's wrong." She was sometimes lucid, sometimes disoriented, and even when lucid, she suffered from amnesia, remembering some things and forgetting others. She couldn't even recall her own name or hometown. When she finally calmed down, she hugged Ngoc tightly and whimpered, "They were so cruel, sister. They killed my husband and they wanted to kill me too. Wah, I managed to escape quickly." Ngoc listened, her heart filled with sorrow. Her pity grew when the woman mentioned she had suffered a miscarriage while fleeing. "You have nowhere else to go, do you?" The woman nodded. Ngoc then said, "Stay with me." They became sworn sisters, and Ngoc took care of her. Her daughter also agreed to let the poor woman live with them. Since they didn't know her name, they called her Van Messy Hair. From then on, Van helped Ngoc sell fabric across the street. Hearing this news, the townspeople loved the kind mother and daughter even more. That evening, it rained heavily. Van was helping Ngoc tidy up when a huge clap of thunder struck, making Van scream in fear. Ngoc had to calm her down countless times. As the two sisters were preparing to close up and go home, a customer stepped out of a car, looking rather menacing. He stopped them from closing the shop, saying, "I want to buy some fabric." The customer is always right. Ngoc stopped and warmly asked, "We have many types, which one would you like?" He went inside to choose fabric but found nothing he liked. Then he picked a white piece of fabric and wanted to buy it, but Ngoc was out of stock. She promised it would be available tomorrow. He looked for a moment and refused, wanting it immediately as he needed it urgently. So, Ngoc pleaded with him to come back at 4:00 a.m. to pick it up. He agreed. He got into his car and took off his jacket because it was hot. Van saw a red rose tattoo on his shoulder beneath his tank top and gasped in fear, about to scream and chase after him, but the black car sped away. Van watched the car vanish, distraught, while Ngoc looked at her, puzzled. "What's wrong, dear?" Van was now more lucid. She led Ngoc into the fabric shop and pulled down Ngoc's shirt to show her the X-shaped tattoo on her own chest, then tearfully recounted, "How could I ever forget that night? It was dark, I couldn't clearly see their faces, but by the flickering light of the fire, I managed to catch a glimpse of them. Every single one of them had a red rose tattoo. After they branded this X mark on my chest, they took off their clothes, intending to rape me, but I managed to escape. And I swore I would get my revenge, sister." "You mean he was the one who caused you that trauma that night? Are you telling the truth?" "I could never forget, boohoo. I will kill him." Ngoc embraced Van. "Don't worry. Let's tidy up now and go home, it's very late. You must not kill him, okay? He will pay for his crimes. But I told you not to, and you still harbor that intention. Let's go home." The fabric shop door closed, leaving a cold, desolate night scene. Leon's restaurant had closed earlier in the afternoon. Now, the market was utterly silent, with only a few night vendors and snack stalls remaining. The man drove his black car down the dark, gloomy road. He drove around, then returned to the city. The streetlights had begun to blaze. He drove straight into a maid's shop. Meanwhile, at Ngoc's house, which was quite spacious, clean, and airy, Van was settled into the room next door, which used to be a maid's room. That maid had died, hanging herself in the room, so Ngoc was very afraid, and her daughter didn't dare to clean it. Even day and night, the room remained dark and gloomy. "I'm sorry, dear, this is the only room available. If it's not comfortable." Van showed no fear. In fact, she was quite happy. So everything settled down. Perhaps exhausted from the long day, Van asked to go to bed early. Ngoc, meanwhile, began to work on her loom, weaving the fabric requested by the menacing man in black. She had to deliver it by 4:00 a.m. Crimes hidden for 20 years. Now, only 7 of the 8 perpetrators remain. One is dead, the others live freely under the law. What will be their fate? The entire city was enveloped in silent night. Suddenly, in an alley, a black car was chasing a barefoot woman. Her clothes were disheveled, her belly pregnant, as she struggled to run down the dark road. The black car slowly followed behind her. "Help me!" She tripped and fell to the ground. The car sped toward her, a loud crash, and blood splattered on the road. Ah, it was just a dream. Van had been having this dream, seeing herself in that state for the past 20 years. She jolted awake, wiping away sweat. Leon, in her room, heard Van's desperate screams and rushed in. "What's wrong, Auntie?" Van's tired, dazed face looked up and replied, "I had a nightmare, it's nothing, child." At that moment, she startled, seeing the clock read 4:00 a.m. She quickly rushed out of the room, to Leon's bewilderment. She ran into the yard and saw Ngoc's car was gone, confirming that Ngoc had gone to the fabric shop to deliver the goods to that man. Van immediately ran to the shop, a sharp knife in her hand. She intended to teach him a lesson he would never forget. At the fabric shop, the lights were bright. Ngoc was happily packing the goods into a box. Van arrived at the shop, knife in hand, fueled by 20 years of hatred. She quickly hid in a nearby bush. Half an hour passed, and she fell asleep in the bush. Suddenly, a blinding light in front of her and the blare of a car horn startled her awake. It was clearly the man from the afternoon. He was still alone in the black car. Van was about to step out, but she hesitated for a moment. Ngoc saw him arrive and, happy, quickly handed him the goods. Seeing that Ngoc had kept her promise and knew how to please customers, he began to feel favorably towards her. Ngoc was over 40, yet she possessed a captivating beauty, a sophisticated elegance that many desired. He was much younger, only in his 30s, but had already taken a liking to the shop owner. They chatted and laughed for a long time. Finally, he paid and took the fabric to his car. He put the fabric in first, then pulled his keys from his pocket and carelessly dropped them. They rolled under the car. "Damn it!" He angrily kicked the car out of frustration, then crouched down, reaching for the keys. Van saw her chance. She crept out of the bush, holding the knife with an extremely angry expression, approaching him from behind. He was too busy looking for his keys to notice Van behind him. She raised the knife, intending to stab him, but suddenly Ngoc rushed out and stopped her just in time. At that moment, he turned around. He was surprised to see another woman, but she was dirty, unlike Ngoc. He asked who she was. Ngoc replied, "This is my sister." "Oh, haha, I can't believe such a beautiful Ms. Ngoc has such an ugly sister. Well, goodbye, ladies." With that, he got into his car and sped away. "Let go of me, sister." Ngoc angrily threw the knife away. "I told you not to do this. Why didn't you listen to me?" "Stop it, sister. You weren't in my situation. How could you possibly know? You'll never understand the pain of losing someone you love." Van sobbed. Ngoc knew Van was agitated, so she held her hand and said, I understand everything." Van found no comfort and snapped back at Ngoc. "No, you don't understand anything. You know he's the one who killed my husband. He's a murderer. So why wouldn't you let me get revenge? If you truly understood me, you wouldn't have done that." Ngoc, angered, yelled, making Van silent. "Enough!" Ngoc took Van's hand and led her into the shop. "Come inside with me." "Let me go. I'm not going anywhere. I must go." Seeing Ngoc's determination, Van began to feel scared and silently followed. Ngoc suddenly unbuttoned her shirt, revealing an X-shaped mark on her chest, identical to the one on Van's chest. Van stared at Ngoc, shocked. "Sister, you were also harmed by them." "Today, I won't hide anything from you. I was also victimized by them, and then they brutally killed my husband." As Ngoc recounted this, tears streamed down her cheeks. She choked up, continuing, "When I lost all reason, that was also the moment I lost him, Tai." At this moment, a flood of memories surged through Ngoc's mind like a waterfall. Scenes of them together, their intimate moments, the bonfire, sitting and confiding on the green hills. The most terrifying scene was the moment they were separated and how tragically her husband died. She thought these mixed memories of joy and sorrow had sunk into oblivion, but today they surged within her fiercely. Then Ngoc buttoned her shirt, sat down with Van, and continued her story. "My name isn't Ngoc, that's just an alias. My name is Ngoc, and my husband's name was Tai. We loved each other very much. On that honeymoon night, they came and destroyed all our sweetness, leaving me with the bitter taste of hatred." Van felt that her own suffering was nothing compared to Ngoc's, but she stopped and said, "No, that's not right. Your husband died from a serious illness." "At that time, I had just left my husband's grave. I wandered like a homeless person. I kept walking until I reached a main road. I fell to the ground, and in front of me was a very luxurious car. They stopped and took me in. The owner of the car was a wealthy young master. He took me as his wife, and I changed my identity to become the Ms. Ngoc you know today. My purpose was to wait for an opportunity for revenge, but I didn't know who to look for then. That night was utterly chaotic. I didn't get a chance to see the red rose tattoos you mentioned. We're so lucky to have met, sister. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know where to start. Thank you, dear." Van was calmer now. She approached Ngoc, remorseful. "Sister, actually, I was pretending to be crazy to blind them, but I'm not crazy at all. My name is Bitch Van, and my husband was Min Than. They killed my husband and threw his body into the river. The river current was too strong. I didn't dare to retrieve his body to bury him properly like your husband." "Bitch Van, do you know why I stopped you?" "No." Because if you kill him now, it won't do any good, and you could be in danger. We need to approach him to find out the whereabouts of the other 6 murderers. Then we'll begin our revenge plan. Yes, I understand. I won't act impulsively like that again. Murderers are usually lustful, aren't they? Then from today, this very beauty will destroy them. Sister, you said your husband's grave is still on the Green Hills, right? Can you take me there? Of course. It's been a long time since I've been there because I didn't want to relive that horrifying night. It was now 5:00 a.m. The 2 sisters held hands, walking through the misty dawn, heading up the Green Hills. They had to pass through a forbidden road. Sister, this road is forbidden. It's all right, dear. We'll just go for a bit, no one will know. So the 2 sisters entered the road. It was already cold outside, but as they stepped onto the road, the air became even colder. They felt a chill and put on extra sweaters, but the deeper they went, the colder it got. Suddenly, a strange bird flew out, squawking loudly, startling them. The 2 women walked along the dirt road, holding flashlights. Though it was 5 a.m., the dawn still held a mystical, eerie twilight glow. Everything was indistinct, hazy in the morning mist. But finally, they reached her husband's grave. They had left in such a hurry that they hadn't brought incense or candles. The grave stood stark and solitary. It had been 20 years, and Ngoc had never dared to set foot here again. The place where they united was also where they lost each other forever. Today, with Van by her side, she felt courageous. Tai, I'm here. Your Ngoc is here. As sworn sisters, Van also came before the grave of her sworn brother. The cold grave of her husband amidst the chilly morning mist had no warm incense or candles, so they simply bowed and left. On their way back, they again passed the forbidden road. The 2 sisters tried to talk to each other to forget the spine-chilling fear. Suddenly, Van cried out, "Sister, someone's there." Ngoc looked in the direction Van was pointing and saw a man, but strangely, he was wearing no clothes. Van exclaimed in horror, "Oh my God, who's so shameless? Why is he walking around naked?" "No, dear, that's not it. Wait a minute, this figure looks very familiar, as if I've seen him somewhere before." "Who is it, sister?" "Tai." "What did you say, your sworn brother, Tai? Are you still alive? Sister, don't scare me." The man heard them and turned to look at the 2 women. From such a distance, and with the sky not yet fully bright, it was hard to make out his face. Ngoc suddenly lost all fear and ran towards him, calling out loudly, "Tai!" She ran very fast towards him. The man suddenly jumped into the bushes and disappeared, to the astonishment of the 2 women. "Tai! I knew it, I knew you wouldn't abandon me." Van ran to Ngoc, grabbing her arm. "Sister, calm down, there's a cliff ahead." Ngoc looked closely, startled, almost falling into it. After regaining her composure, Ngoc told Van, "My dear, we will have our revenge. The time has come to avenge them." "Really, sister? Today we visited your husband's grave. He appeared, and he wants us to take revenge, and you've decided not to wait for anyone." "But how will we find them? It's almost dawn, let's go home, we'll talk about this later." "Yes." The sun emerged, the weather chilly. As the morning sunlight illuminated the entire city, the white mist gradually dispersed. The sounds of life began a new day. After discussing their plans, the 2 sisters proceeded with their revenge. Today, the man driving the black car, Leo, came to Ngoc's fabric shop again. With Ngoc's sharp and alluring charm, the lecherous man was utterly captivated. He even divulged information about each member of his group to Ngoc without the slightest suspicion. He would never know that by speaking these words, he was sealing his own death. "I can't believe that at 40, you're still as beautiful as a 20-year-old girl." "You flatter me too much, young man, but I have a place that's even younger and more beautiful." "Really, can I see it?" His lecherous nature was clear, his eyes sparkling, always eyeing Ngoc with desire. Ngoc, aware of this, immediately replied, "Of course, but not now." "Then when, sister? I will wait." Ngoc smiled gently and said, "I'll wait for you here tonight, the later the better." "Yes, yes, of course I'll come." He was overjoyed, even buying several bolts of fabric to take home. Before leaving, he even blew Ngoc a kiss, just like a pair of lovers. Ngoc's eyes welled up with tears, red and still trembling. She felt disgusted as he tried to sit close to her earlier, but she had suppressed it. Van, who had been nearby, stepped out immediately. Are you okay, sister? Very good, proceed as planned. Yes. The two began their revenge plan. Leon, unaware of anything, went to her restaurant to sell food as usual. That day, the fabric shop was bustling with customers. There were even tourists from other places. Ngoc and Van took turns selling. It was called a fabric shop, but Ngoc also sold clothes, especially wedding dresses. At that moment, a 20-year-old girl, accompanied by a young man, came to the shop and asked Ngoc, "Auntie, do you sell flesh-colored wedding dresses here?" What? You're asking for a flesh-colored wedding dress? Oh, you're joking. You mean a nude-colored wedding dress, Auntie. Ah, I see. Come with me inside to choose. Ngoc warmly led the girl inside. She also chatted with her. Is he your boyfriend? Yes. When are you two getting married? Next month. I wish you both happiness. Thank you. The girl neatly packed her items into a bag and left. Ngoc's shop was truly busy today. The two sisters worked tirelessly from morning until late night. As the city lights came on, customers gradually thinned out. The man who drove the black car, Leo, was not driving a car today. Today he rode a large displacement Honda, his hair slicked back with gel, looking like a real playboy, and he looked very dashing. He was riding on the road to Ngoc's shop, going from one town to another, then turning onto the dirt road that was forbidden. Although forbidden, there were no barriers and people still used it as usual. He was no exception. He steered with one hand, whistling cheerfully, riding alone on the empty road. Suddenly, he saw a distant figure of a man, again a naked man. He also had his back to a tree as if relieving himself, seemingly aware of Leo's approach, and gestured with his hand. What is this? Who are you to be so bold? Standing naked here in the middle of the night, are you insane? The man remained silent. Leo revved his engine and sped off, riding straight to Ngoc's shop. Ms. Ngoc, I'm here. Welcome, young man, the feast awaits you. He stepped inside, noticing that the shop hadn't changed, and asked Ngoc, surprised, where's the party? Follow me, it's in the secret room inside, and it's just the two of us. Ha ha. He naively followed Ngoc inside. At this moment, his mind was filled with wild, dark thoughts. Ngoc led him into the secret room. There, a lavish feast awaited, with all sorts of appetizing dishes and fruits beautifully displayed. A bottle of red wine sat on a luxurious table, inviting immediate indulgence. Sit down. Yes. Ngoc began to uncork the bottle and pour him wine. She came to his side and offered him a drink. They chatted happily. A moment later, Ngoc asked him, "Are you a gangster?" That's right. Then do you have any interesting stories? Could you tell me? He burst into laughter as soon as he heard her. Of course, but I won't tell you about a job. I'll tell Ms. Ngoc about the first time I killed someone. Ha ha. He was a cold-blooded fanatic. He recounted killing a person as calmly as if he were swatting a fly. He spoke with immense pride, showing no fear or disgust for his own crimes. At 35, I'm already cold-blooded, killing without a second thought. When I was 5, my father took me along to kill. Haha, that feeling is indescribable. That happy, really? Yes, killing since childhood, so now the bloodlust within me is incredibly fierce. Who did you kill? If I remember correctly, when I was 15, I went with my father and brothers to the Green Hills and killed a husband, breaking up a loving couple. Did breaking them up make you so happy? I was the one who delivered the final stab to the husband. Haha, and my brother cut off his lower parts. That's right. How did you know? I guessed. Anyway, let's put these things aside for now. Please fulfill your promise. Show me your most beautiful place. All right. Ngoc stood up, holding a glass of wine, and fed it to him until he drained it. As for her, her buttons came undone, revealing her chest, making him stare intently. The X mark on Ngoc's chest was unmistakable. It was their gang's branding iron. Ms. Ngoc, what is this? How do you have this mark? Ngoc rebuttoned her shirt, glaring at him with eyes full of hatred. Who are you? I am the wife of the man you destroyed. No, I am the woman from 20 years ago on the Green Hills. No, how can it be? Ngoc threw the glass of wine in his face, then picked up a fruit knife, startling him into sitting up. Ms. Ngoc, what are you doing? I will kill you, Ngoc gnashed her teeth, looking at him like a wolf about to devour its prey. Ngoc swung the knife, but he dodged in time. He tried to fight back, but suddenly his whole body felt weak, his eyes struggled to open. It was then he realized the wine contained a sedative, but it was too late. The man fell to the ground, unconscious. A blank whiteness. He passed out and half an hour later woke up, his hands and feet tied tightly to a chair. Two women were there, Ngoc and Van. How are you feeling? He groggily looked at the two women. The drug was still active, so his eyes kept drooping. Ngoc looked at his pain but felt immense delight inside, gnashing her teeth and holding the knife, saying, "Now we will together torture this savage man." How delightful. No, no, don't. Ngoc slapped him, startling him awake, then he slumped again. It was Van's turn to slap him once more before he became fully conscious. Blood dripped from his mouth and two teeth fell out. Tonight will be your last night. The wheel of karma has turned. You will die tonight. No. Van, stuff a lemon in his mouth. After Ngoc gave the order, Van stuffed a lemon into his mouth. Both of them cleared a table, which was now covered with knives, scissors, and a metal saw. Ngoc picked up a knife and approached him. She tore his shirt open, ripping it down to his stomach, revealing his chest and the muscular body of a young man, firm and toned. Ngoc looked at him and lightly ran the sharp blade of the knife over those muscles, increasing his terror. Ngoc made a diagonal cut across his firm chest, and blood began to flow. His pain was indescribable, for his mouth was crammed with a large lemon, blocking his throat. Ngoc happily made another cut, forming an X. Perhaps she was returning the X mark branded on her own chest years ago by them and other unfortunate victims. He writhed in pain, his nerves and veins standing out even more clearly. Van, seeing this, also came forward, picked up a knife, and smoothly cut his tendons, growling, "You murderers, you cut my husband's tendons back then, so today I'm cutting yours." Ngoc pulled down both his outer and inner pants, exposing the entire body of a young man before the two women. He was in agony and utterly humiliated. "Everything you sowed for us today I will return." Without further hesitation, Ngoc grabbed his manhood and pulled it taut, making him widen his eyes in excruciating pain. She brought the sharp blade down, but though the knife was sharp, his skin was thick. She had to saw back and forth many times before the manhood of a male lay in Ngoc's hand. Blood gushed like a faucet. He screamed in pain and humiliation until his throat was torn, spitting blood from his mouth and dropping the lemon to the ground, accompanied by delighted laughter. His mouth was freed from the lemon, but the wound was too deep and painful for him to utter a single word. Go and pay for your cruelty. We won't let you die easily. You will die slowly in extreme agony. Years ago, my husband promised to give me a beautiful wedding dress, and when I wore it, I would be the most beautiful bride. But all my hopes were destroyed by you all. So now, sister, I will help you create a wedding dress made of skin. A human skin wedding dress from his skin. Hearing these words, he grew even more terrified, struggling to break free from the chair, but he couldn't. Exhausted, he toppled over, chair and all, onto the floor and lay still. Let's begin. He wanted to scream loudly in fear, but as he opened his mouth, the wound throbbed and bled more. Seeing this, Van grabbed his head, pulled it back, and stuffed cloth into his mouth. Ngoc threw his manhood to the ground and stomped on it until it was crushed right before his eyes. What could be more painful than watching one's own body part destroyed in front of them? Ngoc grabbed his hand, turned him over, and plunged a sharp knife into his thick skin. Piece by piece, she peeled his skin from his face, down his shoulders, and to his feet. He lost blood and died from infection, his eyes wide open. His entire layer of skin was completely stripped, like a frog. The revenge of the two women ended at midnight. No one knew of his death. Only those in his circle were aware of this gangster's disappearance. After everything was done, the two moved his body to a cellar behind the shop. Then they returned to celebrate at the table, which had been prepared with a lavish feast of food and drink beforehand, and opened another bottle of wine. They happily drank and ate until morning. The next morning, Lian went to her restaurant, oblivious to the disappearance of her aunt and mother. She assumed they had gone to the fabric shop and didn't pay much attention. The sky was bright, and the two women were sound asleep at the table. Ngoc startled awake, seeing that it was morning. She quickly woke Van, and only after they had cleaned everything did they dare open the shop. That day, Ngoc's shop wasn't as crowded as usual, but she was still very happy. Today, Van would follow an address to find the whereabouts of the remaining killers. The revenge plan had begun. The entire flourishing city was incredibly vibrant today. Crowds of people thronged the streets, and it was a festival. People were heading towards the largest building in the city center to celebrate. It was rumored there would be fireworks tonight. Today, Van was alone. According to the address, this place was very close to the killer's home. She also wanted to enjoy herself. Today, she had dressed up and wore a beautiful dress, despite being 35. She went into the crowd, dancing with the locals like a girl in her 20s. Ngoc, at her shop, though not as busy as usual, still had a few customers. That day, both women were very happy and full of life. Amidst the crowd of beautiful young men and women, and people of all ages from many places, a grand party was held. In a room with dazzling crystal chandeliers, Van stepped into the party and noticed everyone seemed to be of aristocratic lineage. If not for her revealing her age, no one would have known she was 35. Her dress was exquisite, and her captivating dance moves attracted many attendees. She was incredibly agile. Perhaps she was once a professional dancer. Thousands of eyes watched her dance. She was the highlight of the festival today. But a moment later, all eyes shifted to a girl next to her. She was more beautiful and splendid than Van, and she was exactly 20 years old. This girl, in a short and extremely seductive dress, instantly drew all eyes upon her like a beauty queen, eliciting gasps of admiration. This was Trang Thur, a famous socialite. She was beautiful and always the center of attention. Van, in a short time, was overlooked by everyone, and she stood aside. Watching Trang Thur dance, Van couldn't help but admit that she was both beautiful and professional. Each dance move was met with cheers and applause. At the climax, Van was startled to see the chandelier above Trang Thur's head about to fall. She quickly ran over, pulled Trang Thur by the arm, and both slipped and fell just as the chandelier shattered. At that moment, the lights in the room dimmed. The audience screamed in fear, running everywhere. Due to the rush, Trang Thur didn't get a chance to see the face of the person who saved her, so she also started running, looking for Van, who had already left the room. Van was utterly panicked and ran out of the party building. Fortunately, a few minutes after she ran out, a massive explosion occurred right where the room she had left was. She knew this was no accident. It was clearly an assassination plot. Someone was trying to kill someone at the party. Trang Thur was lucky to escape death as she also quickly ran out of the party, but in her haste, she twisted her ankle and had to limp painfully. "Is someone trying to kill me? I have to get out of here quickly." With all her strength, Trang Thur reached the parking lot. She found her car and her driver, who was dozing inside. She quickly knocked on the door, but he didn't hear her. She then discovered the door was unlocked. A gentle pull opened it. Annoyed, she ran in and pulled the driver out. "What kind of work are you doing?" Suddenly, the driver fell to the ground. He had died from a rope around his neck. Indeed, she was being assassinated. Overwhelmed with fear, she screamed loudly and tried to run out of the parking lot, but a hand covered her mouth. At Ngoc's house, news of the terrible explosion in the city's largest building startled her because that was where Van was. She immediately rushed to her car to go there to find Van, with only a faint hope. Although they were sworn sisters, Ngoc's affection for Van was as sincere as if she were her own flesh and blood. The two were now seated comfortably at a nearby cafe. It took a long time for Trang Thur to regain her composure. "Thank you so much for saving me, sister." "It's nothing. Why are they chasing you?" "I'm Trang Thur, a beauty queen in the city. They are a notorious organization. They wanted to take me as a wife for their leader, but I refused. So now they want to kill me for another reason. I know too many of their organization's secrets." "That's very dangerous. I fought their subordinates. If he finds out, I'll surely be in danger too." The two talked back and forth, and soon they became close. Van saw that Trang Thur had influence and status, so she probably knew many people, especially gangsters. She decided to tell Trang Thur about her purpose for being there. Trang Thur listened, feeling sorry for her, and promised to help wholeheartedly. "Does that gang have any distinguishing features, sister?" "Yes, they all have a red rose tattoo." Trang Thur gasped at these words, dropping her glass of water. which shattered on the floor. They are even more dangerous than the organization that was chasing me. They kill without batting an eye and are protected by certain powerful individuals, so no one dares to cross them. Precisely because the law cannot punish them, we sisters will do it. No, don't, it's too dangerous. You have nothing left. I don't fear death, and no matter the cost, I must avenge them. Seeing Van's sincerity and determination, Trang Thur reluctantly agreed. All right, I'll take you to that mansion, introducing you as a new helper so you can stay there. That way, your revenge will be long-term, though quite risky. Thank you so much, dear. Now I need to go. We'll meet at this cafe tomorrow at 3:00 p.m., okay? I'll take you. Thank you. With that, Trang Thur left. Van also paid and left the cafe, heading straight back to the fabric shop. Ngoc was frantic. She was still at the scene of the accident, going from one ambulance bed to another in search of Van, but she was utterly disappointed. There was nothing more she could do but go home. Her hands trembled so much she couldn't even drive. The streets were packed, sirens blared, and ambulances sped by one after another, making her heart pound even harder with anxious thoughts. As soon as she arrived home, Ngoc burst into joyous tears, seeing her sworn sister safe and sound. She ran and hugged Van tightly, nearly suffocating her, and Van didn't know what was happening. "You little one, do you know how worried I was about you?" "I'm sorry, sister." Rain suddenly poured down on the street, leaves rustled on the veranda, and raindrops pattered on the roof. Van embraced Ngoc. Having been an orphan, she now realized the warmth of family affection. She was in her 30s but still had a childish personality. Now she nestled into Ngoc's arms, softly calling out and pouting. Van looked out the window, recalling events from a few hours earlier. In the parking lot, Trang Thur had been kidnapped by two masked men and stuffed into a barrel. Van had witnessed the entire incident and stealthily crept behind them. At that moment, she overheard one of the men on the phone. "The beauty queen is in our hands. The boss said to kill her to cover our tracks and throw her into the abyss in the forest near the Green Hills." Here, we must speak of the Green Hills. The hill was rumored to be the gate to hell, so few people visited, and countless bodies had been buried in its abyss, unknown to anyone. Van immediately grabbed a large stick and slammed it onto one man's head, sending him tumbling to the ground, unconscious. The other man turned to look at her. "Where did you come from, you evil woman? Even if we have no grudge against each other, I cannot tolerate the evil things you have done to that girl." He angrily pulled out a knife and rushed towards her, intending to stab her. Fortunately, she dodged and delivered a powerful blow to his knee. He crumpled to the ground in pain. She hit him once more on the forehead, and he too fell, lying motionless, his fate unknown. Startled, she threw the stick away, then opened the barrel and rescued Trang Thur. Fortunately, Trang Thur was on the verge of suffocating. Any delay would have been life-threatening. Trang Thur happily thanked Van, and Van asked her, "Who are they?" "Let's go, or they'll be back soon." Police cars and ambulances also arrived, sirens wailing loudly. After the explosion, over 20 people had died, and the rest were severely injured. The two quickly left the area. Because of her sprained ankle, Trang Thur couldn't walk further. Van had to help her to a nearby cafe. They would rest there temporarily. When Ngoc arrived at the scene, everything was chaos, smoke and dust everywhere, and she couldn't see her sworn sister. Her memory completed the flashback, bringing her back to the present. "Sister." Ngoc's eyes welled up with tears as she hugged Van even tighter. "My dear sister, when the rain stopped, it was already late afternoon." That day, the two sisters went to the shop again. Coincidentally, Trang Thur happened to come to their shop that day. She had heard of this shop for a long time, but only today had the chance to visit. The car horns and dust outside were suffocating. She quickly stepped into the fabric shop. The air inside was so fresh, cool, and pleasant. "Where's the owner?" Van, who was combing her hair inside, heard the call and came out. Both were very surprised to learn that this was the sisters' fabric shop. Trang Thur happily chose fabric and asked to buy a flesh-colored wedding dress. Recently, in this city, young people seemed to favor this style. Everyone who came asked for it. "Are you getting married soon, Trang Thur?" "Yes, I am. I'm going to marry the richest man in this region. And before I go to my husband's family, I will fulfill my promise." She carefully packed the fabric and wedding dress. "Sister, I'm going out for a bit now, okay. Where are you going? Remember to come back early for dinner. Yes. Immediately after, Trang Thur took Van to a very large mansion. Let me introduce you, sister. This mansion is called Rose Family. This is also the place you need to be, and what's more, the young master of this house has proposed to me, and I've accepted. What? You're going to marry into that savage family? You don't know how dangerous and cruel they are. Yes, but fate has brought us together. How can I resist or refuse, sister? Let's go inside. The mansion gate opened, revealing a vast green lawn. To the right was a swimming pool, to the left a fish pond, and further away, clusters of vibrant flowers. 6 or 7 cars were parked nearby. Van walked, gazing around in all directions as if lost in a maze. She walked until her feet ached, but hadn't yet reached the main house. As they walked, Trang Thur told her everything about the mansion and its inhabitants, missing nothing. Approaching the main house, an elegantly dressed, elderly woman stepped out, smiling warmly. My dear daughter-in-law, who is this, my child? Mother, this is my sister. Oh, what's your sister's name? You can just call me Van. Yes, mother, her name is Van. She's the new maid for our family. We don't lack people here, but since my dear daughter-in-law introduced her, all right, I accept Ms. Van for the job. Van was overjoyed, bowing in gratitude. Thank you, madam, I will do my best. But all the maid rooms are taken. Yes, I only ask to work part-time. I'll ask to leave in the evening. That's fine too, let's go. The 3 entered the house. Inside, it was crowded with burly men who looked very intimidating. Some were so fierce they terrified her, but she managed to calm herself down. With Trang Thur's help, she easily entered the mansion. In 3 days, it would be the wedding of Trang Thur and Hai, the eldest son of this family, known for his elegance and charm, unsurpassed by anyone. It was late afternoon, and Van still hadn't returned. Ngoc felt a sudden urge to visit her late husband's grave. She closed her shop early, carried her offering bag, and walked up the green hills. That day, the setting sun cast a gloomy light through the golden and green leaves. It had just rained lightly, and crickets chirped mournfully. Stepping onto the hill, her heart stirred. Looking at the surrounding landscape, her heart ached with memories of the past. Her late husband's grave was covered in oak leaves and much debris. She cleared everything, then placed cakes, fruits, incense, and candles beside the cold grave. Tai, don't be lonely anymore. From now on, I will visit you every day, don't be afraid. Saying this, she knelt down and hugged the dry, hard dirt grave as if embracing a person lying beneath the earth. The wind suddenly blew very strongly, and thick, misty smoke began to rise from somewhere. Ngoc's eyes drooped as if she were about to fall asleep. Faintly in front of her was the shadowy figure of her deceased husband. This time, he was fully clothed, but fresh blood soaked the crotch of his pants, and there was a bloodstain on his white shirt. His eyes, deep and hollow, stared at Ngoc. Ngoc was initially frightened, but she calmed herself, feeling more pity than fear for him, even if it was just a spirit. Her deceased husband appeared but said not a word, silently looking at Ngoc. The space was now cold and gloomy, and it was quite dark. The image of her husband became clearer. Ngoc choked up, looking at him. Tai, say something. He remained silent. Ngoc looked at him in pain, then ran to embrace her husband's spirit, but upon touching him, it was like touching empty space. Her husband vanished with the smoke of the incense and candles. Tai. Every time she visited his grave, she saw her deceased husband appear. Perhaps he missed her dearly. She visited 10 times, and 10 times he appeared. What did he want to say, that he remained so silent? Ngoc silently left, walking down the hill, her heart still lingering, looking back at the grave. She wiped away her tears and whispered to herself, perhaps because I haven't avenged him yet, he is in great pain and resentment towards those men. All of you will die, no one will be spared. Ngoc left. At that moment on the green hills, an 18-year-old girl was cutting grass when she startled, seeing a man's clothes in a bush, soaked with dry blood and dirt from a very long time ago. It was buried under a layer of dry firewood in a nearby reed bush near the grave. She curiously approached and picked up the shirt. Suddenly, in the desolate green hills, a thunderous crack echoed, startling all living things, and a sharp slicing sound from a nearby bush terrified her. The girl's eyes widened. She threw the shirt to the ground, grabbing the sickle in her hand, her eyes red like coals and filled with intense fury. The girl was no longer herself, and Ngoc's deceased husband had possessed her when she touched his relic shirt. The sky turned dark again, bringing rain, making the moonless night even gloomier. The girl's screams echoed across the green hills, reaching the houses down in the city. The screams sounded like long-held resentment and pain. Van had returned. Fearing Ngoc's worry, she didn't tell her what she was doing. During that dinner, Leon finished eating and went upstairs first, leaving the two sisters. Van asked Ngoc if she could quit her job at the fabric shop to work outside. Initially, Ngoc seemed very surprised, but thinking it might be her sister's dream, she didn't refuse and gently asked, "What will you do?" "It's a secret. I'll tell you when I succeed." All right then, after dinner, come to my room, okay?" "Yes." After dinner, Van followed her sister upstairs. Ngoc happily handed her a phone and said, "To avoid what happened the other day, I'm giving you this phone so we can easily communicate." "Wow, it's beautiful. Thank you so much, sister." Ngoc was happy to see her sister joyful, but she still didn't know what to do next for her husband's revenge plan. "Sister, tomorrow I'm going to a wedding of a new friend. Don't wait for me for dinner, okay?" "Which friend? Do I know her?" "Hee, she's just someone I just met. Anyway, thank you for the gift. I'll go to my room now." At this moment outside, someone was screaming and wailing miserably. Ngoc, startled, opened the door and rushed out to see what was happening. It was only an old, frail woman crying, looking for her daughter. The old woman was the mother of the grass-cutting girl. Since she was possessed, the girl hadn't returned, making the old woman extremely worried. She told Ngoc that her daughter had insisted on cutting grass on the green hills today, but she had forbidden her. Because that hill was abandoned, rumors circulated about evil spirits appearing and also about dangerous gangs gathering there. If something happened, there would be no one to call for help. It was extremely dangerous, but her daughter adamantly refused to listen. Now she didn't know where to look. Perhaps she would start searching on the hill. But it was too dark, and how could an old, frail woman walk now? The house had only the two of them, and now with her daughter gone, it was terribly quiet. The poor old woman was lucky to have Ngoc as a neighbor. She promised to send someone to help her search, and the old woman tearfully thanked Ngoc. "Boo-hoo, I don't know if she's been kidnapped or if something bad has happened to her. Boo-hoo. Please go home now. I will help you find your daughter." "I'll rely on you, Ms. Ngoc. You are the kindest person in this flourishing city. Everyone loves you very much." "All right, be careful going home." The old woman leaned on her stick, taking heavy steps. Ngoc looked at the old woman, almost in tears. The green hills. The green hills were very familiar to Ngoc, so she would go up there now to look for the old woman's daughter and also visit her husband's grave. Ngoc had never known what it was to be afraid of ghosts, only of the unfathomable depths of human hearts. With a flashlight in one hand and her offering basket in the other, she walked straight up the hill. Tonight, there was a moon, but the overgrown and dense bushes obscured its light. The weather was chillingly cold, but fortunately, Ngoc had worn an extra coat. As she walked, she stepped on something very viscous, startling her. Shining the flashlight down, she saw a long trail of blood flowing from above. She felt something very strange and, gathering all her courage, ran to her husband's grave. "Tai, I'm here." Reaching the top of the green hills, the wind blew stronger and the moon now shone brightly. She turned off her flashlight and walked directly to his grave, placing the plate of sweets and incense and candles down. Suddenly, a girl with long, flowing hair stood in the distance, silhouetted against the moonlight, looking very mysterious, seemingly staring intently at Ngoc. Ngoc recognized her. It was Nhung, the old woman's daughter. "Nhung, is that you? Your mother is waiting for you at home." The girl remained silent, standing there, a blood-soaked sickle in her hand, dripping onto the ground, startling Ngoc. She ran to call out, but as soon as she got close, Nhung vanished behind the bushes. "Nhung, what happened?" Nhung was small but ran too fast. Ngoc helplessly knelt before her husband's grave and sighed, not knowing what to tell the old woman to reassure her. Ngoc lit the incense and bowed 3 times to her husband, then turned to leave. On her way back, she wondered why such a gentle person had become like that. She had no idea what was happening. Ngoc didn't know that Nhung had been possessed by her husband. The next morning, Van had already left for work. She had arrived at Ro's family mansion. Today was her first day on the job and also Trang Thur's wedding. The fabric shop was now left with only Ngoc. Meanwhile, at Ro's family mansion, Trang Thur was getting ready for the most important day of her life. Van was also there, helping Trang Thur. The bride today wore a nude-colored wedding dress with a white pearl bracelet and a very elegant golden necklace, like a princess. With the addition of a gold-plated tiara adorned with pearls, the beauty queen's wedding was truly special and grand. After helping Trang Thur, Van felt thirsty, so she went out to find a water dispenser, accidentally wandering into Mr. Kai's room because all the rooms here were designed similarly. Mr. Kai was over 50, known as a lecherous old man. Van was no less attractive than Trang Thur. She was quite beautiful and charming herself. Wandering into the room, she saw Mr. Kai sitting on the bed watching TV. As soon as he saw her, his eyes lit up, and he immediately approached her, asking, "Where did this beautiful girl come from?" Van gently bowed and replied, "I'm the new maid and also a friend of the bride." Beautiful, very beautiful. Mr. Kai had been a widower for a long time. As soon as he saw her, he lunged, grabbing her hand lecherously. "What are you doing, sir? Let go of me." Van slapped him, leaving a clear handprint on Mr. Kai's cheek. "You bitch, you dare hit me?" He strongly grabbed and restrained Van's hands. Knowing what this place was like, but driven by revenge, she felt no fear. He took off his shirt, revealing a red rose tattoo, which made Van's eyes widen and filled her with intense anger. She twisted her body and bit his neck fiercely, making him let go. "Damn you, bitch." He gained momentum and lunged to embrace her, but she grabbed a pestle from the table and hit him hard on the head, knocking him unconscious, then frantically ran out. She ran to find Trang Thur's room, but the mansion was too vast to navigate. Getting lost once had traumatized her. She wanted to ask someone for directions, but there was no one around as everyone was in the reception hall. Trang Thur, ready in her room, was about to step out when Hong entered, blocking her. He was the third son and the groom's younger brother. Although handsome, he was incredibly lecherous and unprincipled. Most of the men in this mansion were consumed by lust. Only the groom was somewhat better. Trang Thur cried out in alarm as he flew to her, covering her mouth, pressing her against the wall, and uttering vulgar words. "No, mmmmh. My beautiful sister-in-law, I can't control myself anymore. Indulge me." Then he kissed Trang Thur all over. She felt humiliated and pained, tears streaming down her face. He laughed, stuffing a gag into her mouth, tying her hands tightly with a belt, and placing Trang Thur on a chair. He was like a predator about to devour his prey. Trang Thur was terrified, wanting to scream as he stood naked before her and began to do dirty things. Meanwhile, Van wandered into another room, unaware of what was happening to Trang Thur. She rushed to find the lady of the house, Trang Thur's mother-in-law, to ask for help. Seeing that Van was new and unfamiliar with the mansion, the madam led her to the bride's room. When the door opened, they saw Trang Thur lying unconscious on the bed, assuming she was tired and had fallen asleep. The perverted Hong had disappeared. Trang Thur's dress was disheveled. Van helped Trang Thur sit up. A moment later, she regained consciousness. She cried bitterly but dared not tell anyone because the power of the people in this house was immense, especially Hong, who was also a notorious killer. To avoid disrupting her momentous wedding day, Trang Thur silently straightened everything and stepped out. With Van's support, she felt much more confident. And so the party began. Today, more guests attended than a festival. People sang praises and offered blessings, and the wedding party was magnificent, feeling like a royal wedding from ancient times. The wedding feast and ceremony went smoothly, everything was done. Now it was time for the final act, the bridal chamber. The special moment of the wedding of the beauty queen, Trang Thur, and the eldest son of the Rose family mansion. Van was helping with cleanup, and guests were still very numerous. As soon as a dish was empty, Van had to bring out more for the guests, and she and the 6 other maids in the house were struggling to keep up with the soft drinks and beer. Amidst such a grand wedding party, the joyous cheers suddenly fell silent at the groom's challenging shout. "What's happening? That sounds like the groom. He's also known for being fierce, but at least he's principled. What could be going on?" Van stood bewildered, not knowing what was happening, when the room door burst open. The groom dragged the bride out by her arm, shouting before the crowd, "Everyone, look! You thought she was an innocent girl, but it turns out she lost her virginity before marrying me. Oh my God, people buzzed with gossip, pointing at Trangther, shaming her with every word, and negative comments assailed her. Trangther was startled, never imagining her husband would be so adept at such things. What could she do in front of so many people? She cried out, begging her mother-in-law to clear her name. The mother-in-law gently stepped forward and helped Trangther up. The groom angrily looked at his mother and snapped, "Mother." The mother-in-law slapped Trangther across the face, startling her, and yelled, "Get out of here, you wayward girl. Beauty queen, my foot. You're just a flower for the entertainment of men. Get out of my house." Trangther felt more pain and humiliation than ever, in front of so many guests and even her fans. She just wanted to throw herself into the river and die. She screamed miserably, then pulled up her dress and ran out of the house. Van, panicked and worried, ran after her. Trangther ran, crying and wailing desperately to the heavens. Trangther ran out of the mansion, and Van chased after her, following her all the way to the Green Hills. Because there was a very deep abyss there, Trangther's intention was to commit suicide. Trangther reached the Green Hills, and the two sisters hugged each other, crying bitterly, Trangther telling Van everything. Van grew even more furious. Suddenly, a black car also drove up to the Green Hills. Out stepped Hong and Mr. Kai. It turned out this was a plot by the two perverted men of the Rose family mansion. First, old Kai wanted to rape Trangther, but as he was a prominent figure in the family, doing so openly wouldn't look good. Hong intended to cooperate and rape Trangther so that when she was driven out of the house, they could openly take her in for their sexual pleasure. The plan took a different turn with Van's presence. But now, what could the two women do when there were two burly, fierce men and they had sharp knives in their hands? The two women were utterly helpless and terrified. Van remembered Ngoc and took out her phone to call, but Hong snatched it and smashed it to the ground. No. Mr. Kai stepped in front of Van and said, "You hit me, remember? Now I'm going to eat you. And Hong, you get Trangther." "Yes, second young master, haha, help me." "Boo-hoo, today you have nowhere to run? You idiots. This hill is abandoned, you two foolish girls." The two men lunged, pinning Trangther and Van to the ground, making them scream desperately in fear. The screams of the two sisters echoed beneath the Green Hills. The two perverted men, along with two of their subordinates who followed, were allowed to enjoy the two sisters. They felt even more humiliated. Kai tore Van's dress, revealing her chest and tattoo. The old man's eyes widened in utter surprise. Are you that girl who bit my ear and escaped 20 years ago?" "That's right, it's me, you murderers. I've returned to take revenge." "You think you alone can do anything against us? You're just a lowly maid. You escaped back then due to luck, but now don't even dream of it, girl." Ah! A sickle embedded itself with a thud into old Kai's hand, making him lose his balance and fall face first to the ground. Van quickly pulled out the sickle and slashed his hand tendons, then slashed again, severing his leg tendons as well. "You were the one who cut my husband's leg tendons." Old Kai collapsed to the ground in pain. Hong, startled, had already pulled out a gun. "You bitch!" Trangther, exhausted by his assault, lay unconscious on the spot. The two subordinates saw this and ran to help old Kai. One was hit in the forehead with the sickle. The other, terrified, backed away. Hong and old Kai stared, wide-eyed, as Hung leaped out of the bushes. There was no wind, yet her hair stood on end like a lion's mane. Her eyes glowed with fierce hatred. She approached Van, snatching the sickle back to the astonishment of the two perverted men. Hong didn't hesitate, drawing his gun, but Hung was quick as lightning, slicing off his gun-wielding arm, which flew into the abyss. Hong screamed in agonizing pain, blood gushing out, horrifying old Kai and Van. The remaining subordinate, terrified, jumped into the car and drove away, abandoning the two men. Hong collapsed to the ground in pain. Hung handed the sickle to Van, then walked to the dead subordinate's body, pulled out the sickle from his forehead, and angrily advanced towards the two men. Hung signaled to Van. Van immediately understood and used the sickle to hook Hong's throat. Blood gushed out violently, drenching the ground. He screamed frantically as Hung picked up green stones and stuffed them into his mouth, one by one, filling it completely. Suddenly, he swallowed some of the stones, choking. Old Kai was the one who, years ago, had cut off Tai's manhood, causing him to writhe in agony and humiliation. Now, Tai had borrowed Hung's body to return that old grudge. Ngoc walked towards Kai, smiling as she pulled down his pants to his knees. Without a sickle, she gripped his genitals tightly. She put one foot on his stomach, pressing him to the ground, while her hand pulled forcefully until it tore off. Blood gushed out like a faucet. Van also ripped Hong's pants to the ground to avenge Trang Thur. She grabbed his genitals. He truly was a pervert. He was both terrified and aroused. She took the sickle and cleanly severed it, sending it flying to the ground. He wanted to scream but couldn't, dying instantly from suffocation. Old Kai, weaker from blood loss, struggled to crawl, but Ngoc approached and grabbed his hand. Ngoc was incredibly strong now, surprising even Van. Ngoc lifted Old Kai like a weightlifter lifting a barbell, then threw him straight into the abyss. Hong was already dead. After throwing Kai into the abyss, Ngoc walked over, grabbed Hong's feet, and threw him down into the abyss with Kai. Van was overjoyed. She thanked Ngoc profusely. But Ngoc remained silent, quietly picking up the two blood-stained sickles and walking straight up the green hills. Although Van didn't understand what had happened, she was very grateful to Ngoc. Van quickly helped Trang Thur up. The girl was conscious but utterly exhausted. She struggled to tell Van, "Sister, in the Rose family mansion, there's a very evil man whose power is no less than the two men just now. He can bribe the police. I feel like I won't make it, so I must let you know about him to be careful." "Who is it, dear?" Suddenly, a loud gunshot boomed, and the bullet pierced Trang Thur's heart, killing her instantly. Van turned around in horror. Someone had known the whole story and even the plot of Old Kai and his nephew, and had secretly followed them to eliminate all witnesses. Who was it? Trang Thur. Turning back, Van only saw the back of a person dressed entirely in black. He blew on the gun, then got into his car and drove away. "Trang Thur! Trang Thur!" Van screamed in agonizing pain. She regarded Trang Thur as her own sister. She hugged Trang Thur's body, crying miserably, just like the scene where she hugged her husband's body years ago. At that very moment, Ngoc had arrived to visit the grave and witnessed everything from behind. Van was utterly flustered. Now that everything was exposed, she had no choice but to tell Ngoc everything. "Oh my God, Van, why did you hide such dangerous things from me? Boo-hoo, I was so afraid something would happen to you. Who would take care of Lian?" Ngoc embraced Van and said, "This revenge is for us sisters. From now on, I forbid you from doing anything alone, understood?" Ngoc helped Van sit up, wiped her tears, and called an ambulance to take Trang Thur to the hospital. But unfortunately, she didn't make it. Van cried until her eyes were dry. The two built a grave for Trang Thur next to Ngoc's husband's grave. As for the subordinate who fled, he was so panicked that he drove his car into the abyss, dying in pieces, erasing all traces. From that day on, the hatred in the hearts of the two sisters reached its peak. From today, with Ngoc's careful planning, Van was fully equipped, given a new phone with a GPS tracker, and returned to the mansion as a fragile maid. Now, she looked at each person in the Rose family mansion with eyes full of rage and hatred, but she carefully hid her emotions so that the revenge plan would succeed quickly and the two sisters would be reunited. That was the motivation. That was all Van had. She would not be afraid, but would fight until her last breath. After that fateful wedding day, people gradually forgot about Trang Thur. 7 days later, as night fell, the Rose family mansion held another party to celebrate the patriarch's 80th birthday. That day, though crowded, it was not as packed as the wedding. Today, Van and several others were in charge of hanging decorative string lights that flashed in various beautiful colors. At the party, it was time for everyone to enjoy wine and dance in the hall. A beautiful woman in an extremely elegant, aristocratic short dress, more beautiful than the mistress of the mansion herself, entered. She carried a basket of flowers and wore a black mask, looking very mysterious. As she entered, guests, especially the single men, stared at her. She smiled brightly with red lipstick, like a queen. When she lifted her mask, Van gasped in horror. It was Ngoc. She never imagined her sister could be so beautiful. Since the fabric shop would be closed at night, Ngoc had time to come to the mansion to help Van, and also because she was worried about her sister. No one knew that this beautiful woman was an uninvited guest. A familiar customer of the fabric shop exclaimed, "She's Ms. Ngoc, the owner of the fabric shop." "Wow, that shop is famous, so that's the owner." The music started, the room lights dimmed, leaving only the soft, shimmering electronic string lights in the party. A rather elegant man from the crowd stepped out and invited Ngoc to dance with him. Ngoc did not refuse, and they both began to dance. Van carried drinks, offering them to each guest. She was also quite beautiful, so someone also invited her to dance, but she declined. At this moment, the patriarch's birthday cake was ready. Quinn Cao Tu, the fourth son of the mansion, called Van into a room to get more paper flowers to hang outside the door. She obeyed and went inside to get the paper flowers. In the hallway, her phone rang. It was Ngoc calling Van, reminding her of the next step in their plan. After the two sisters' conversation ended, Van turned around with a start, seeing that Quinn had overheard their entire conversation. She was terrified. How could she have been so careless this time? "You, Van, what kind of plot are you hatching? Tell me quickly." "You overheard everything, sir." "If you don't tell me, I'll kick you out of this house." "Please, sir, don't tell the madam." "You want me to keep it a secret, huh? Then tonight you're off duty. Come to my room and serve me, and I'll keep this quiet." As he spoke, he eyed her from head to thigh. Van recoiled, realizing that every man in this family was consumed by lust. With no other option, she pretended to agree, hoping to figure things out as they went. Meanwhile, downstairs, the singing and dancing had stopped, replaced by a circus troupe performing with knives and swords. Everyone in this troupe was masked and consisted entirely of women. Each person stepping onto the stage held a knife, a sword, or other sharp objects in their hands. This family was truly wealthy, displaying all sorts of entertainment. The patriarch had stepped out and sat in the center, everyone gathering to enjoy the special performance. The soft music had now become lively. A group of people holding knives and swords performed very skillfully, but among them was a girl dressed in very poor clothes. Wearing a conical hat that covered her face, she was different, not dancing as uniformly as the other girls, thus unintentionally becoming the center of attention. Instead of holding knives and swords like the other circus performers, she held two blood-stained sickles. Each piece of music began, and the girls danced, showcasing their talents. The music grew louder and louder, and the cheers became increasingly boisterous. The 80-year-old patriarch was still lecherous. He stared at the female circus performers on the stage, all fair-skinned because they wore short dresses up to their thighs, watching them incessantly, one after another. As for Van, she had been pushed against the wall by Quinn. No matter how much she screamed, no one heard her because the cheers and shouts downstairs from the party drowned everything out. "Don't resist, just indulge me, Quinn." He began to pull down her shirt and licked Van's shoulder, disgusting her. She grabbed a vase and slammed it onto Quinn's head. Ah! She wasn't strong enough, so he caught her and slammed her to the ground. The more she screamed, the more he enjoyed it. Suddenly, a blow from behind with Ngoc's high heel. It turned out that before entering the room, Van had secretly messaged Ngoc, who had arrived just in time to save her sister. "Monsters like you no longer deserve to live on this earth." Quinn turned around, startled, looking at Ngoc, whose reputation was widely known. He was even more surprised when Ngoc helped Van up and called her sister. Ngoc grabbed Quinn by the collar, pulling it open to reveal a red rose tattoo, which infuriated the two sisters even more. "Murderer, you're a murderer." Ngoc slapped him across the face, blurring his vision. Van also stood up and slapped him once more. "Look, do you remember this face? This is the face of the girl you all destroyed 20 years ago." Suddenly, Quinn was dazed. He recognized Ngoc as the wife of the man their group had humiliated and tortured that night. He was the one who followed behind and kicked Tai repeatedly in the stomach until he vomited blood. "Ah, so it's you. I can't believe you're so famous and beautiful now." "Because it's fate. Fate allowed me to live until today to kill all of you. Tonight, I will definitely devour both of you." "You damned bitch. Tonight, you're the one who will die, not us." Ngoc kicked him in the stomach. As he crumpled to the ground, Ngoc used her high heel to crush his genitals. His frantic screams were unheard, as the music and cheers downstairs drowned everything out. Van grabbed a glass vase and slammed it onto his neck, knocking him unconscious. After waking up, Quinn was tied tightly with colorful electronic string lights. Ngoc lifted his legs and Van pulled his arms. The two carried him like a pig. The two sisters struggled to drag him to the window and with all their might threw him out. "Ah!" From the second floor, he landed on an electrical pole, and the wires began to spark violently. His body caught fire, and a sizzling sound was heard before he tumbled straight into the swimming pool. The entire large pool was electrified, but fortunately, no one was there. A guest saw him fall from the floor and screamed in alarm. The music stopped, and the lights malfunctioned, forcing the circus performers to stop and be escorted inside to rest. The once bustling atmosphere was now silent, filled with fear. Everyone ran to the swimming pool and saw a charred body sinking to the bottom, but no one knew who it was. Meanwhile, upstairs, the two sisters held hands, ran out of the room, and quickly blended into the crowd to create an alibi. They also ran to the swimming pool. Everyone's faces showed worry, but no one saw the joyous expressions of the two sisters. A horrific murder had occurred, yet strangely, the people in the house were indifferent. They didn't call the police because it would create many other problems. And perhaps because they didn't recognize him as Quinn, they coldly had someone dispose of the body, then return to the room, but the patriarch's birthday party was postponed until the electricity was repaired. The patriarch was escorted into his private room by 2 bodyguards to rest. Outside, guests were still numerous. The two sisters, Ngoc and Van, were drinking wine outside. They chatted together when Van suddenly pointed to a beautiful star in the night sky. It shone brighter than all the others. "Sister, that star is so beautiful." I think kind-hearted people become the most beautiful stars in the sky after they die. Trang Thur. Van remembered Trang Thur, her sworn sister. She was both sad and happy, sad because she remembered, happy because she had avenged her. A moment later, the elegant man, Victor, who had danced with Ngoc earlier, approached and flirted with her. Ngoc initially intended to refuse, but she accidentally glimpsed a red rose tattoo hidden beneath the thin white fabric of his shirt. She immediately agreed and invited him to her fabric shop. He was eager and asked if he could come right away. Of course, she wouldn't refuse. So the two left the party, and Ngoc was driven home by him. On the way, he continuously told Ngoc about his life. Meanwhile, at the party, Van had to clean up while waiting for the electricity to be repaired. She had no idea her sister had left. While wiping, Van accidentally passed the patriarch's room and heard the voices of the madam and the patriarch. "Hey, what are you doing? Be careful." "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you forget these are my prosthetic legs? I won't do it again." Van inadvertently learned the patriarch's secret. He had no legs, using prosthetics and a wheelchair to move. If trouble arose, with his old age and frailty, he couldn't even crawl, let alone escape. She was intently listening when the housekeeper grabbed her hand and pulled her away, scolding her. "Be careful, girl. Don't you know this is a restricted area?" "Oh, really? Then how can I clean?" "Only I am allowed in the patriarch's area because I've been his maid for a very long time. Hurry downstairs and prepare food and drinks for the guests, lest anyone finds out. It'll be trouble." Yes, Van obediently went downstairs. She carried food to the guests' tables one by one. The electricity had also been repaired. The Rose family mansion once again glowed with party lights. Van was busy with her work, while Ngoc had long since left with the strange man in his car for her shop. Now, at the fabric shop, Ngoc had opened the door and invited him inside. He looked around the shop and said, "It looks nice, not bad, but I wish the beautiful owner would take me to her home. That house is now reserved for my daughter, so she has a private space to focus on her upcoming cooking competition." "Oh, so Ms. Ngoc is not only beautiful but also capable and loves her daughter very much, huh? You flatter me too much. Please sit." Ngoc brought out a bottle of wine, about to open it when he said, "No need, I have a bottle of red wine prepared in my car." With that, he called a subordinate to retrieve it from the car. After everything was set, he sent his 3 subordinates outside. To give the two some privacy, he locked the door. Gently, he uncorked the wine and poured it into 2 glasses for them, meticulously raising his glass to Ngoc's lips with tenderness and affection. Just like a loving couple, Ngoc suddenly felt a flutter in her heart, as if she was experiencing Ty's caress from long ago. Ngoc trembled slightly and closed her eyes. Suddenly, a flood of memories surged back. Images of them happily together on the green hills. On the hill at night, their vows of eternal love, their promise to be together for the rest of their lives. Ngoc seemed mesmerized, constantly whispering Ty's name. Suddenly, he gripped her neck, startling Ngoc and shattering all her dreams and memories. "What are you doing?" "Cough, cough," Ngoc screamed. I want to hear you scream in despair, just like how you killed my brother." "That means you knew everything?" He laughed with delight, then tightened his grip on Ngoc's neck even more. "Yes, I know everything, and I will kill you just as I killed Trangther." "That means you killed her." "Yes, I did it. I personally ended that talkative girl's life with a bullet laced with potent poison. Just one hit, and she dies instantly. You didn't have any feelings for me either. You followed me because you saw the rose tattoo on my chest, didn't you? You all will not be forgiven." He took out a syringe, claiming it contained a deadly poison, something that kills in an instant. "You will die a painful death. Your life will end." Ngoc struggled helplessly as he tried to bring the poisoned needle to her neck. At this moment, she felt like she could no longer endure it. He pressed the needle close and injected it into Ngoc's neck. Aha! Van, at the party carrying a glass of water to guests, suddenly stumbled and fell because she felt in sudden discomfort. It seemed that Van and Ngoc's bond was so strong that they could feel each other's emotions telepathically. If her sister was in pain, she was also in pain. "Why do I have this strange feeling? Why am I so anxious and uneasy? Sister Ngoc, where are you?" Van abandoned her work and ran, searching everywhere for her sister. On the stage, a captivating knife circus act was ongoing. Guests stood watching in large numbers. She had to weave through people, one by one, searching for her sister like finding a needle in a haystack, unaware that Ngoc was facing Victor, Cao Ba, the third son of this Rose family mansion. He was the second most wicked person in the group of men with red rose tattoos. Ngoc, in agony, had been injected with half the syringe. She suddenly saw the rose tattoo on his chest, and a surge of power seemed to well up within her. She bit his hand fiercely, drawing blood. Victor cried out in pain from the wound and quickly let go of Ngoc's neck. "Ah!" Ngoc, gasping for air, coughed several times, then, taking advantage of his momentary distraction, kicked him with all her might. He couldn't react in time. He fell backward, hitting an electronic sewing machine. Even more painfully, the arm holding the syringe got caught in the sewing mechanism. Ngoc quickly ran over and pulled the sewing machine's flywheel, causing the sharp needle to plunge straight through the palm of his hand, piercing flesh and severing tendons. Blood splattered everywhere as he screamed in extreme pain. "Ah, ah, ha." His three subordinates heard their young masters scream and burst through the door. Ngoc grabbed the ready bottle of wine and hit each of them on the head, sending them tumbling, their fates unknown. Ngoc then took out several lemons and stuffed them into Victor's mouth so he couldn't scream. Ngoc started the sewing machine, and its needle began to move up and down. Victor's hand was mashed, a mere pulp of flesh. No matter how much pain he felt, his mouth was full of large lemons, preventing him from screaming. Tears welled in his eyes, and his eyes glowed red, glaring at Ngoc with intense fury. Ngoc approached, pulling out all the lemons. The lemons were soaked with blood from his mouth and saliva, making Ngoc utterly disgusted. "Why did you inject poison into me? Why am I still alive?" He remained silent. Ngoc angrily slapped him hard. He still remained silent. "If you don't tell me, I'll skin you. If you tell me, perhaps I'll reconsider." "That's because I tricked you. There was no poison in it, just the red wine from the table. I wanted to torture you, to make you die slowly in agony, not die an easy death, you fool. It's not because I'm afraid of you that I'm telling you this, but because I want you to know how cruel we are. Ha ha ha." "You sick pervert." Ngoc stuffed the lemons back down his throat, silencing him completely. "That's enough. You wanted to have fun with me, right? All right, I'll grant you a favor before you die, a sweet death." Ngoc pulled his pants down to his knees. Ngoc unhesitatingly caressed him from head to toe. When he was truly aroused, she picked up a razor blade, used for cutting thread and fabric, and sliced at his genitals. He was simultaneously in agonizing pain and crazed with lust, blood gushing out even more profusely than the sewing machine just now. Ngoc had chosen a dull razor blade, so it had very little sharpness but caused prolonged, excruciating pain. Ngoc suddenly turned to look for something and left the room. The torture was interrupted. He suddenly remembered he had a gun in his pants pocket, which he had prepared earlier, and pulled it out. When Ngoc returned with a table beside her, holding a bag filled with sharp knives, he raised the gun as if to threaten her. But the earlier pain and the incredibly intense psychological torture had left a strong gangster like him with no strength left. He couldn't even pull the trigger. Ngoc smiled, looking at Quinn, who was more helpless than she and Ty had been 20 years ago and felt immense delight. Now is the time for you to pay for your crimes. If your heart is still pounding calmly after this story, please subscribe to join Chillify Audio and discover many more mysteries every night, each one sending shivers down your spine.